C's ready. Randy's ready. Michael's ready. The audience is ready. Parks Casino. Where is it located? Shippensburg. What is Shippensburg close to? Everything. Carlisle, Chambersburg, Martinsburg, Winchester, Hagerstown, all those locales and more. Drive to Shippensburg because they're celebrating their 1-year anniversary. What do you get for the 1-year anniversary? How about $70,000 in free slot play and cash prizes every Friday in February? 5 lucky guests will win $500 in free slot play every hour from 5 until 10 p.m. Action, entertainment, excitement, all the fun stuff, including the Liberty Bar and Grill. And by the way, great comedians. As a matter of fact, this Friday at 8 p.m. from Comedy Central, comedian Richie Byrne headlining Parks Casino in Shippensburg. Visit parkscasino.com for the details. Got to be 21 for the casino gambling problem. 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, headlines from the Wednesday edition of the newsletter. As you know, when you go and vote on the poll question each and every day, you are prompted to suggest a poll question of your own. We love reading them. They're great fodder for the conversation of the program. Sometimes we actually use them. Well, lo and behold, yesterday, Robert Goldthwait from Madison, Wisconsin, suggested a poll question, which was as follows. Would Michael interview Vladimir Putin on video and post the conversation unedited if presented with the opportunity? This is not a hypothetical. It's not that Putin has invited me to come to Moscow and conduct an interview, but he is about to be interviewed or has already been interviewed by Tucker Carlson. The story that's getting a lot of attention, and by the way, I don't know when the last time was that we used the Moscow Times for the newsletter, but we do today. Former Fox News star Tucker Carlson confirmed Tuesday he's traveled to Moscow to interview President Putin, putting an end to speculation surrounding the purpose of his visit to Russia and whether he intended to ultimately meet the Russian leader. Quote, "We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon," Carlson said in a video that was posted on X. "There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we've thought about it carefully over many months. We're in journalism," he said. "Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into the war in Ukraine that is reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed." There's more to it than that. My answer to Robert's question, yes, I would. I mean, for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. If you think about so many of the controversial personalities that I have interviewed on POTUS, on CNN, Roger Waters. I mean, the whole Roger Waters interview from a year ago. I think about Bill Cosby being a guest here on POTUS right before the start of trial number 1. Bill O'Reilly, did he interview me or did I interview him?
I think you were like the first guest on his podcast. Right. And then that made news.
And then I said to him in the podcast, "Hey, I want you to come on CNN." And then it was like, he's going to be on CNN with Smerconish. And then it became a controversy.
Yes.
And then he called me at my house. I remember this so well. Like one of these things, like I was in the kitchen. And he said, "Hey, I'm not going to come on CNN with you. It's not worth it for you. It's not worth it for me.
Okay.
You will be under such pressure from Jay-Z."
Wow, you're really telling tales out of school now.
In terms of the questions that you'll have to ask me, like, let's forget it. Like, all right. And that was it.
Wow.
How about last weekend? Carrie Lake and RFK Jr.?
Isn't there a difference between the sort of politicians or personalities who have really controversial views or have done something, possibly criminal versus
TC.
a world dictator who's like killing people?
But I'm
just asking.
Okay, I'm not on Team Putin. I'm not on Team Putin.
I know you're not
wouldn't
on
go
Team
suck
Putin,
up
you're
to
not on
Vladimir
Team
Putin.
Cosby.
I'm not on any of their teams.
I understand.
I'm on Team Independence and critical thinking.
I understand that.
Yeah, no, I'd do it. I would do it.
Do you think that do you think Tucker Carlson's on Team Putin? Is that why people are having such fits?
Yes, that's part of the reason.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is because it's Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is because it's Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson. But I've put up with this over all 30 years that I've been doing what I'm doing.
Sure.
I mean, in 2000, I went to Cuba with Senator Arlen Specter and had tremendous dialogue with Fidel Castro. It never yielded an interview. That wasn't the purpose of the trip, although I did remember following up and trying to get an interview. But the fact that I referred to him as President Castro, and I shared stories and said, I then said to him, "Well, President Castro, will you condemn the events of 9/11 because they had just taken place 3 months prior. And people had conniptions because I addressed him as President Castro. So it's fraught, but I would do it. I'd be less than honest if I didn't answer Robert's question and say yes. But don't look at Tucker and think that the way he handles it is how I would handle it, because that's not the case. Poll results from yesterday, speaking of the poll question of the day, again, a lot of voting, 25,508 votes cast. Do you believe the polls? Do you believe the polls showing that at this moment, Joe Biden trails Donald Trump? 60%. In literal numbers, 59.91. Let's call it 60-40 said, no, I don't believe the numbers. Do I believe the numbers? I do believe the numbers. Do I think they're predictive of where this is going? No. I mean, my God, look at the news today. Today is such an unbelievable news cycle. There are so many things going on. There was such competition for the 20 aggregated links that I selected for today's newsletter. We have no idea what's about to unfold, not the least of which is the timing. I've always said this. I've talked about it on today's program. It's the timing of when Trump goes to trial, if at all, before the election. So I'm not predicting that Trump wins, but do I think that at this moment in time? Yeah, I believe all the data because they're all telling the exact same story, that whether it's viewed nationally or by battleground states, Donald Trump is in the lead. Today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Does Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas deserve to be impeached? My vote? No. Fired? Yes. If I were Joe Biden, I would fire Mayorkas. The border is porous. We have a crisis at the border. There's got to be accountability. But has he committed high crimes and misdemeanors? Not that I'm aware of. And I don't like this trend toward everything becoming an impeachable offense. Rob Rogers draws for Smerconish.com on Wednesdays, TC. Today's editorial cartoon. I know you love it. I love it.
It has Trump as like a little baby king with his little immunity crown on, and the court's flicking that crown off the top of his head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will have something soon to say about the editorial cartoons that run Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Smerconish.
You just can't help
newsletter.
yourself. You got to tease, don't you?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do. By the way, do you remember the professor from American University, Alan Lichtman?
I do.
It's like, it's time to have Alan Lichtman back on the program.
Right. He's got his keys. He's jangling the keys.
He owns, the 13 historical predictors for a presidential victory. He says right now, Joe Biden has the edge. Do you know what I never think to do?
What?
I never think it's like the political pollsters. Like, I never think after the election to go back and say, hey, you remember Alan Lichtman and his keys?
Was he right?
How'd he do?
How did he do?
I don't know. Huh. I don't know. I just know that he's built this whole brand for himself.
He said the keys predicted Donald Trump's victory in 2016 against all
what about
conventional
2020? Because I seem to recall him thinking that the keys were for a Trump real, but I don't know.
Interesting.
But I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'll go back and check.
Okay, well, when we get him on the program, I will say to him, by the way, how'd those keys play out
nice.
in the last cycle?
Okay.
A story that I know is going to impact my livelihood, but one that I don't fully appreciate. The headline today, ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers all launching a new sports streaming service. They say this could change TV forever. It's primarily a sports deal, but it's all about how the future lies not in conventional cable. Your cable package, do you have CNN and Fox and MSNBC and what else are you getting? But rather in what's being bundled for you to stream. Axios today has a story that says the writing has been on the wall for a while, but the new announcement coupled with huge milestones by YouTube TV makes it clear, listen to this, TC, that cable may have months, not years, to live. Months, not years to live.
That is a little
alarming. Right. Yeah. Everybody, diffuse.
It's all about the sports.
Right. More headlines from the Wednesday edition of the newsletter. We talked about Toby Keith yesterday. I must say, I really had a lot of people in my orbit, my personal orbit, tell me how much they enjoyed the opening of yesterday's program.
I did too.
Reminiscing about Toby Keith.
I had people tell me that those songs were stuck in their head in a joyful way the entire day. Everybody was walking around singing Toby Keith songs. It was Fast Cars
Yep.
2 days ago.
Yep.
Yesterday was all Toby Keith.
I yesterday had to go into the city for a variety of business reasons and was listening to Toby Keith the whole way in and
Amazing.
the whole way out. What I didn't realize, because we've spoken a lot about Taylor Swift, is that it was Toby Keith and his record label, Big Machine Records, that was a joint venture with Scott Borchetta, that was the first record label to sign Taylor Swift.
Well, I love this from Rolling Stone. It says, during Swift's first ever television appearance, she strummed the chords and belted out the lyrics to Teardrops on My Guitar, the second single from her debut album. She was 15 years old at the time, sitting in the music room of her high school in Henderson, Tennessee, still in disbelief about the way her life was changing. At the time, she said, you're in the room with him and you feel it. There's a power there. She told Nashville's WSMV TV about Keith.
So,
amazing.
Toby Keith really touched a lot of people. I mean, the coverage of his passing, I talked about the impact that he had on my life because I associate him so much with the soundtrack of a post 9/11 world. I was not alone, as I judged from your reaction and the reaction to his passing generally.
Sure. Yeah.
You remember Jack Sweeney? Jack Sweeney is the University of Central Florida student who has been most notably tracking Elon Musk's plane. Now he does it for a whole variety of people, including Taylor Swift, and she doesn't want him to do it anymore.
She does not want him to do it.
She's in Tokyo, by the way.
There's a cease and desist.
Yeah.
And she says you're inviting stalkers, and they're gonna sue in some way if he doesn't knock it off.
You know that she's on Alice's schedule. She's in Tokyo.
Well,
she's in Tokyo.
She's got to perform.
Got to perform. Can make it back for
Where
the big
will she
game.
be on Sunday?
This is an amazing story. You know I love my friends at Parks Casino. This is from the Associated Press. On a fractional basis, how many Americans are going to gamble on the big game? Would you believe 1 in 4 adults? Nearly 68 million Americans, 1 in 4, plan to bet on this year's Super Bowl, setting a record by a wide margin, according to the Gambling Industry's National Trade Association. I think that's a remarkable story. Apparently, Andy Reid has no desire to retire anytime.
He likes the Kansas City Chiefs job.
He's 54.
Took it only days after being fired by the Eagles, and, quote, it turned out better than he dared dream.
He's a good guy. We had exposure to him when he was in town. He was a guest on the program.
He and Tammy, his wife.
You know, I'm thrilled for his success.
Me too.
I think that Andy Reid is genuinely a nice guy. It never lost on me is that the family has had to endure a lot of tragedy. So it's nice to see him, and he looks happy when you see him. Why wouldn't he be?
Why wouldn't he be? I was going to say, come on.
Colts owner Jim Irsay, who has had some demons that he's had to battle in the past, and you'll remember was a guest of mine on CNN. He was a guest of mine on...
Was he?
Oh, yes, talking about the Colts being on the vanguard of mental health.
Oh, my God.
Do you remember? They even ran commercials, TC. One of their players, whose name I forget, he was a great guest, and he's a really interesting guy. He had a really serious health problem that the team...
Kicking the stigma.
Right. Yes, that whole rollout. That the team called a severe respiratory illness for the first time since he had that issue, which was back in early January. He's issued a public statement, quote unquote, on the mend and grateful for all the messages of love and support.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully he is doing better.
There are great headlines today at Smerconish.com, and vote on the Mayorkas poll question. I want to mention something else. There's a story that we have that talks about the Swedish workplace coffee break. It's called the fika. The fika is what it references. In fact, I'll just tell you, the story that we have from the Wall Street Journal says this: would work be better if we all took a collective coffee break? Workers in Sweden certainly think so. Their work life has long revolved around fika, a once or twice a day ritual in which colleagues put away phones, laptops, and any shop talk to commune over coffee, pastries, or other snacks. Swedish employees and their managers say the cultural tradition helps drive employee well-being, productivity, and innovation by clearing the mind and fostering togetherness. It reminds me that yesterday I announced on the program and via my social media that coming up in the Philly Burbs, April 7, I'm going to make a presentation, Sellersville Theater, Sellersville, PA, that I'm calling the Mingle Project. The Mingle Project. And I haven't said too much about the specifics of it other than I've something I want to get off my chest in long form without any interruption of the radio necessary breaks and so forth. This fika story reminds me of yesterday's story about how for the first time kids going to school, more than half are being driven and not taking the school bus. It reminds me of another recent story about the demise of the cashier when you go to a grocery store in favor of the automated checkout, and in general, the loss of weak ties and lack of opportunity for common experience and socialization. I see all of these things in similar fashion. They're having an impact on society and on our politics. I see it all so clearly now, and that's why I want to express myself in long form. And the Swedes getting together and having coffee in the workplace, I think is a wonderful thing. I think we need more fika time in the United States. And the first rule is you got to be in the workplace. Right? You can't get together and commune with coworkers unless you're together.
I'm so familiar with this because they do a similar thing in Norway. They always have breaks. My sister lives and works in an office in Oslo, Norway. And I asked her about this. I sent her the article. She said, we have so many coffee breaks here. There's also a reason for cake pretty much once a week. Yesterday it was chocolate.
Nice.
And she says the collegial and happy nature of a Scandinavian office is definitely one of the things that makes it more fun to be here.
Right. Now, in the United States, what would we all do? We would look at our watches and say, oh, great, it's a good opportunity to run to Starbucks. No, that's not the idea.
No.
The idea is that you put everything
together.
down,
right.
You're together, and you have coffee. So let's get together. Let's mingle with one another. April 7 in Sellersville at the theater. This is the first of what I hope will be a number of speeches that I'll make across the country, but I got to begin in the Philly burbs, right? So join me there. I didn't express clearly yesterday. There are actually 2 shows on one day. 2 shows on one day.
There you go. A matinee and an evening.
A matinee at 3 p.m. and then a 7 p.m. as well. So I really want you to be there. Go to my social media, get the details, buy your tickets now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.